this is Valerie Aiello, and you're listening to Idea Diary. Thanks for coming back to my office and hanging out. Today I wanted to go over another library book I got, which is The Dip by Seth Godin. And I'm really into quitting. I really think that there's a lot of power in saying, like, I tried that, wasn't for me, and quit. There's not a lot of power in not trying, but trying and like moving on is amazing. And Seth Godin talks a lot about being the best, and I'm just not a perfectionist. I'd rather just be in the game. I don't want to be like the best of anything. I mean, it would be nice, but that's just never my goal. I was talking to someone recently about fonts. You know, there's some designers that are really great with fonts. They know the history. They know exactly how every font should be and exactly how every font space should be with everything and the perfectionism that goes into being a font extraordinaire. And although I do like for my pieces to look great, I also don't want to spend 100 years on one project. I'm more of an eyeballer, honestly, and I like to make it to the point that it's professional and move on. I'm more of a workhorse. I'm like, I'm done with this project, let's go on to the next one, because I know with every project, I get more and more savvy with font use. At least that's how it worked out for me. You know, going from college to working in an art department to working on projects, I would learn more and more with every project rather than obsessing over every project being the most perfectly spaced thing that ever existed. And when I think about guitar players, there's some people that shred and that's really important to them, and there's some people that can play 3 chords, but they can write songs all day long. And I think, like, although Seth is probably very successful, the obsession with being the best is just a certain type of personality. It's not the end-all be-all of every success story. When it comes to this book, The Dip, I found the topic really exciting. It's a short little book, and I kind of think it's pretty helpful. He talks about the dip, which is the time period between when you start something and it's fun and exciting to the point when you become an expert. You're kind of going from beginner to useful expert. You hit a dip, and it's something that you have to decide, are you going to move forward or are you going to just let it go, let the dream die? Learning about that moment and learning about yourself and learning how to like master the long slog. You know, you don't quit a marathon. You know, you got to like decide how far you're going to go. So he talks about 3 things. He talks about the dip, and then there's the curve. And the curve is what he calls the cul-de-sac, where you're working and working and working, and nothing changes. Nothing gets better, nothing gets worse. It just is. And he kind of talks about kind of a dead-end job. And I think that happens. If you master something and you do it for 10 years, you might be done. I think we should think about careers in decades, like, what's your 20s career? What's your 40s career? What's your 50s career? What's your 80s career? I think we can get all of our interests in within a century, you know? Get the most important ones out of the way first, so you make sure that you don't leave the planet without achieving things you want to do as much as possible. However, we all just got to do the best we can do. This cul-de-sac thing made me think of bands, because a lot of time if you're a band in your town and you can play the same venues over and over again, and when you're in your 20s you got a lot of friends and everyone wants to go out and everyone wants to see you, but when you start hitting 30s, 40s, everyone wants to stay home. So you got to figure out new ways to get people to come out to a show, but you don't necessarily get anywhere. I think the curve is something where you've got to figure out, do I need to ask for help, or do I need to try a different approach, or give up? Is this like not for me? And when it comes to music, I say don't give up, because you're always going to want to play. I know 7-year-olds that still want to play, even if it's at the local outdoor barbecue place and there's a stage. the music doesn't ever go away. So figuring out like how are you going to keep this exciting? How are you going to keep it moving forward in a way you won't get bored? I think the cul-de-sac part of quitting and failure and whatever the dip is, I think the cul-de-sac is actually a really powerful place to be. It's just you've got to get out of your own way. I think you're the problem sometimes, usually. So the third part of the dip, or third option of a dip, is the cliff. And that's when you just can't, you're too scared to quit, and you're just waiting for some outside circumstances to force you to quit, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously. I know this happens with like a lot of people going to school for law school, and then they get their law degree and they spent so much money and so much time, and then they become a lawyer and realize, oh crap, this is not what I want to do. I think that's the cliff. And usually people are in a cliff for some outside circumstances. I don't feel like you purposely put yourself there, like the cul-de-sac. But the cliff is, sometimes people can't just be honest and can't just do what they want to do. I think it's just a different personality. Those nice people that are like your best friends and then they date a jerk. And you're like, why in the world would this person date a jerk? They're so amazing. But it just happens until the cliff, and then SHIT hits the fan, and then it's over. A new result happens. So in the book, he talks about 8 curves, and I found this very interesting because not that it's not common sense, but when you put it into a little pamphlet for somebody to like just read and examine their own stuff that's going on, I think it's helpful. So 8 curves. 1 is a manufacturing dip. And that's when you want to make something and you've got all the way to the point where you just don't know how to make it yet. And you got to get over this like learning curve to realize the manufacturing part of whatever you're doing. That doesn't have to be like a physical good. It could be being a consultant. There's just the manufacturing for the thing that you want to do next. There's a sales dip. I see this a lot in Austin with the 90s restaurants. Like a lot of the restaurants we used to love to go to, they still are in the 90s. Like they still have the same tables and the same everything as the 90s. And I remember they would used to have hour and 45-minute waits to eat there. And now it's just like a ghost town, but they're still, they still exist. I feel like the sales dip is, you're going to go through times when it's great. And when times are bad, you got to figure out how to like make it happen, get some sales. And that's hard to learn for some people. The education dip, when you don't know something that you need to know to get past the next level, that can stop people for sure. The risk dip, that's a real one. Pretty risky, I feel like. Someone said when you don't have anything left to lose, then you're risky. I think for some people, risk is very hard. And if you don't take it, sometimes you don't get the reward, unfortunately. And sometimes you lose everything. But I think you learn with every failure. So I think if you can get over the fear of losing it all and the possibilities of making it, make that more important than the loss, then, risk doesn't have to strap you down and keep you from moving forward. The relationship dip. Sometimes you are the idea brain and you need a controller brain. There's just a million different relationships that go into making something successful that you got to figure it out. And that is sometimes too hard. And sometimes people don't move forward because they can't figure it out how to work with the people they need to work with to move forward. Conceptual dip. So I guess this is like the glass ceiling. Like you feel like there's a level to how successful I could be, but you got to break it. You got to break the molds and go beyond the conceptual things in your mind that are possible. Because the breakthrough can take you out of the dip and into success. There's the ego dip. So a lot of people won't give up their editing and they can't grow because they got to edit 100 videos that they can't possibly do all on their own. I think we've all known somebody that like won't give up what they think is good in order to like go to the next stage, and it's something we all got to watch out for so we don't get stuck in it. And a distribution dip is kind of like manufacturing dip. It's just a different way, kind of like sales dip. I think it's just like you kind of need all three. You need to be able to distribute whatever it is you're selling, and you got to be able to manufacture it or get the results, and you got to be able to sell it. All those things are really hard to figure out sometimes and can stop people from moving forward. So yeah, he just talks about like seeing all those curves in advance, which I think is a great idea, and something people do effortlessly. I feel like the more things that are not successful, you learn just naturally to watch out for certain curves, certain things that could be roadblocks, and you figure out how to get past them. And I guess that's the show for today. Thanks for hanging out.